What was hardest thing about the Real second season?
I would say living up to the expectation. Like once you film the first season and it's so, critically acclaimed, and you have all of these people saying, "Wow, this is the best thing," this is one of the best sequels I've ever seen, one of the best continuations I've seen. Trying to replicate that is super hard, and the pressure is just really taken up to another level. But I think we pulled it off. I would say I can confidently say that the second season is better than the first season. So
pretty sick.
yeah, it's. I mean, you look at these accolades, like 100% on Rotten Tomatoes, like all of these views on YouTube. It's hard to live up to that, but I think season 2 definitely does it.
That first season came out of nowhere because for me growing up in that era. So to see like you guys take it and go way beyond our expectation is great. Thank you for that. So what did you know before of the Karate Kid? Before you went and like became a part of it? What did you know prior to it? Were you a fan or?
So there were a couple things that I knew. Ralph Macchio was a name that was said all the time because I played tennis for as long as I can remember, and I would always wear a headband, and my mom would always be like, "Oh, you kind of look like Ralph Macchio, like you guys are both brown and have curly hair and stuff like that." So there you go. So I was like, I never attached the name to the face, and things like put him in a body bag or the crane kick, like the really big things I knew. But to be quite honest, I grew up with the Jaden Smith Karate Kid, so that's kind of when I first thought of Karate Kid, that's what I thought of, and then going out for the part and seeing that Ralph Macchio is in it, Billy Zabka's in it. It's watching the other movies and then seeing Cobra Kai. It really is a great continuation of the story, and because of that, it's such a blessing to be a part of the cast.
So you came in fresh to the original 3 films.
Yes, yeah.
Okay, so you didn't have any preconceived notions about them. So
No.
What was your favorite? What did you take from the 3 coming into it fresh and not having any?
Yeah, the first one obviously is the one that everyone knows, so it's the one where the most pop culture references come from. So going into it, seeing some things like when Miyagi says, you walk in the middle of the road, eventually you'll get smushed like a grape, Seeing things like that, being like, oh, so this is where that reference comes from, or where this is what, it kind of was putting one and one together and being like, okay, now I have a newfound appreciation for some of these pop culture references, there's some pop culture references that are just popular because they are, but I feel like the crane kick and some of the other lines are actually good lines. Like they come from a really good movie. It's not just a popular movie and one that people like because there's action or it's a blockbuster. It's a movie that was written very well, that has a story that was somewhat innovative and fresh for the time that it was coming out. A year where Star Wars came out, Indiana Jones came out, Ghostbusters came out that same year, was doing something very different, and having 2 young kids be kind of like the forefront of this big industry. So going into the second and third ones, seeing how it lived up to that, and seeing how they said, all right, the first one was amazing, let's see how we come up with the second and third one, I think they did really well.
How often does the discussion about the events or the tone or even just I guess how you bring elements from those films to the new series, how often does that come up when you're shooting?
So I would say filming Cobra Kai, what the directors wanted to do and us as a cast, what we wanted to do was make sure that it has the same feeling. We want to give the viewers the same feeling they had when they watched the original Karate Kids, but we don't want it to be predictable. We don't want it to be formulaic and be like, all right, there's a kid, he gets bullied, da 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 da. We want it to feel like the Karate Kid, but not be the exact same story. And I think that's what really brings Cobra Kai its, uniqueness and how it differentiates itself from a lot of the different sequels out there. Because you see a lot of these sequels who are doing the same thing over and over again with a new name or a new bad guy. But this show really is different in the fact that it's not the same. It's not a remake, it's a continuation. And I think that's something that the directors and Billy and Ralph and Marty and these guys, they made very clear that at the beginning, we don't want it to be corny. We don't want it to be like too like highbrow, like, hey, this is what, you know. We want it to feel natural, and if there are going to be like nods to the original film or there are going to be Easter eggs, we want them to feel original and natural and not forced. So I think they did a great job.
So when they told you you're gonna do the crane kick, like how did you feel? How is that such a famous thing? Like in like kids grew up with that crane kick, and they told you you're gonna do the crane kick. How did you feel?
I love the context that it's in. I think seeing, you know, you see me walk up to the little the mat, and you see Billy whispering something into my ear, looking at Ralph, and then you see me do like. It has such a different meaning than it did in the original. You know, in Karate Kid 1, the crane kick is something that everyone was like, this is amazing. And in this, people like it, but it's almost like they feel bad for liking it. They're like, oh, maybe I shouldn't be thinking this is cool. This is something that we've respected and idolized for this many years, and it's almost it's thrown out on the first move. There is no amount of respect that's thrown to it. It's almost like a throwaway move, and to bring it in that context, it's awesome. And I have a video that I posted on my Instagram of before I filmed that scene. Ralph was on set, and I was like, I know everyone asked you to do this, but can you do it so that I can look? And he was like, yes, I'll do it. So it's an awesome video. I would definitely recommend watching it. It's really cool.
How do you feel now, like in life, a lot of stuff's been coming up in the news and stuff, but the fact that like your character, or did you know at the beginning your character was gonna have that like, flip the script?
Yeah.
Where you went in from being the victim to being the person that's like, no, this is where it stops. How did you feel about portraying the character and that character?
I would say that Miguel is one of the most, if not the most, three-dimensional characters that I've ever played. And I love that, especially being a Latino in this community, in this industry, being more than just the gangbanger or being more than just the vato on the streets is refreshing. Because it's a great character who happens to be Latino.
Yeah.
They didn't go out saying we want him to be a Latino. We said, all right, now we have this character, we have the person that we want for this role. Now let's build around that. And I really respect that from the directors because it could have been anyone. And I love to be able to represent, you know, I'm Mexican, Ecuadorian, and Cuban, and being Ecuadorian on the show and seeing how they really show authenticity when it comes to food, culture, and even the way you say certain words is really something that I admire, and something that a lot of shows aren't doing. I think what we see a lot in today's shows is it's either all people of color or no people of color.
Yeah.
You know, you have shows like, and I admire them, Fresh Off the Boat, Blackish, where it's all people of color, or you have the token, you know, people of color in the movies and in movies and TV shows, and I think Cobra Kai does a really well job of incorporating it without making it like the main thing. So I love that about the show.
Yeah, I love that great point. Yeah, I love that.
One more.
Yeah.
Well, props to the writers and directors,
Yes.
but you guys as actors are doing a great job. Like,
Thank you.
You guys are bringing a lot of heart, and we see it. What's the choreography, I guess?
Yes.
How much time, effort do you put into the choreography?
So I would say we spent 2 weeks before filming the first season, and it was just learning how to punch, how to kick, and stuff like that. And I played tennis. I did a year of karate, and I thought that I was like, I'm athletic. Like, come on, guys! Like, don't insult me like this. And the first day of training, I swear to God, I wanted to cry. I was like, our stunt coordinator Hito was like, come on, dude! Like, what's up? How come you're not like performing the, you know? And it was like my body and being able to stretch and stuff like that. So those first 2 weeks were tough. This season, season 2. A minimum an hour a day of training, and then on top of that, an hour of stretching. So, but to be quite honest, most of it is boxing. We making sure, because to be quite honest, a lot of the fights in this is cool. I love Benjamin. A lot of the fights in our show happen outside of not only the dojo, but outside of a competition scenario. So they're street fights. So looking like you can really get those haymakers in and stuff like that is the first part. Being sure that you're stretched out so that if you do kick, it looks good and it doesn't, you know, look floppy. Those are the biggest things, but 2 hours a day, one of stretching, one of any other training at the very minimum is what we would do for 3.5 months.
anyone else.
And I'm just happy you got over your asthma.
I love those comments. One of my favorite comments is like, dude, Sensei just cured his asthma. Yeah, I love that.
Get off the spectrum.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Have a good pronto.
Yeah, I like that.
Guys, y'all are gonna
Awesome. Yeah, it was a pleasure to meet you guys, man. Thank you so much, brother. Nice to meet you guys. What's up, guys? How you doing? All right. It is a little different. Yeah, it's funny. It got bleached, went blue, bleached to red, then it faded into pink, and I got a blue for a photo shoot, and now I'm just regular white kid, you know? Yeah, seriously. Yeah, next year it's gonna be just white. I have no idea. Don't quote me on it.
First question, what was the hardest thing about second season?
Hardest thing? Honestly, we had a lot of early mornings. That was pretty hard. One thing about, we film in Atlanta and we film September to like mid-December, and one thing is we have a lot of scenes, because it's set in California, so we have a lot of scenes where we're in shorts and a tank top, and it's in December in Atlanta and it's like 32 degrees outside. So, I mean, in season one, I think it's the last party scene at the beach, it was freezing. It was like high 20s, like low 30s. It was so cold. You got these girls in, booty shorts and stuff, and they're just like so cold, just trying to say all their lines. The big three, the writers are just like, hey guys, like, just try not to act cold, right? It's a summer, So that was, the weather thing is hard, but the training, I'd say we do a lot of training. I think the stretching is actually the stretching is the hardest part. That's definitely really rough, but we would do this thing where we would, snug our butts up against a wall, like facing it. So here's the wall, and you would put your legs in the wall, and Hito and Janelle, our coordinators, would come and just start pressing down on your legs, and we would sit they would like press for like 5 minutes, and then you would sit like on your match for like 15 minutes, and we would just be there just like all of us on a wall, like me, Tanner, Mary, and Xolo. We would just be like so dead at the end, and you get off the wall and your legs like almost don't want to go back to close, so you just sit in a ball afterwards. It was really fun. Like, we were joking around the whole time, but they definitely put us through some hard training. But yeah.
Okay, with Hawk's character, did you know how big an impact he was gonna have on the whole overall story arc and the whole series in general?
You know what's crazy is when I first read for the role, I read for the Dimitri character, and it was called Tanzit at the time, which I don't really know why, but that was just the name. And I went and read, they're like, oh yeah, good job. And then they were like, it was good, but not like good enough. You can read for Eli. He's got one line, So I was like, I was like, it's freaking Cobra Kai. I'm still gonna like go 110%, And I get in the room, start reading, and they're like, oh, you got the wrong sides. So they handed me like the Hawk sides. I was like, whoa, this is is this even the same character? And then in the room, they explained to me, they're like, oh yeah, there's this cool arc. And I was like, oh, now I really want this role, because that's so sick. But yeah, I didn't really know. I was, the first season, I was just flying back and forth, because I was a guest star. So I'd, be in Atlanta for 4 days filming, being back in LA for 2 days, and go back out for another 3 days, so it was constantly back and forth. So it felt like very just like jumbled and rushed, but then when the show really came together, I was like, oh wow, I'm in it like a lot. Like, this is pretty cool, And it was cool to see like the feedback of how many people like just really liked Hawk, He's sort of like this symbol of, you just can get a mohawk and a back tattoo and babes start flocking, you learn karate, you know what I mean?
The thing of like flip the script is now a thing now. And people are like, flip the script.
My buddies joke around and say it to me all the time, because I'm not as cool as Hawk is. I wish I was. I'm glad that, for 4 months out of the year, I get to be the most badass kid in the world. But
and you brought it up now. How long did it take to do the Hawk tattoo? Your tattoo,
the back tattoo. It's actually. I wish, dude. My mom would kill me. Oh my gosh.
Like in the show's like, oh, don't tell my mom.
Like that would be real. My mom would find out. She's. But the Hawk tattoo. It's cut into 3 pieces, and it's like a temporary tattoo. It takes probably like 20 to 30 minutes, and I just like stand with my shirt off like this. And I actually have some scars on my shoulder blades and on like the bottom of my back from skating, just because I like was skating at 8 at one time. And they actually kind of use those scars to like pinpoint where to put the wings and stuff. Yeah, so that's kind of like a weird little thing that they do.
What's your favorite thing about playing Hawk? I mean, we love him as a character. Like, he just seems like a lot of fun, dude. Like, you kind of get to cut loose. And
Yeah. I think the coolest thing about Hawk is, just that factor of being able to cut loose and do anything. It's really fun to just sort of like snap into the character and just be so aggressive, and like nothing is too aggressive at a certain point, you know? Especially in season 2, you get to see a lot more of just the sort of built up anger that's been, you know, in Hawk, and a little bit of backstory with Eli, and you see more of that. So I think that's pretty cool to see. Yeah.
So have you seen all the Karate Kid movies, or which ones have you?
I've seen 1 and 2. I haven't seen 3 or the next Karate Kid.
So since you've seen those two, how does it feel like watching those movies, knowing you're part of that world now, permanently?
It's kind of wild, because I mean, there's like 4 or 5 movies my dad was like, you have to watch these, you know. You know, it was like Ocean's 11 and Usual Suspects, and Karate Kid was one of them. And my brother and I used to argue of who would get to be Daniel LaRusso to like kick each other in the face, you know, because like who really wants to be fake kicked in the face, right? And so we would just wrestle all the time, just over the Karate Kid, you know. And it's just, I mean, the movie's just so cool, you know. I mean, Miyagi was just kind of like everyone's dad almost, you know. So it's kind of surreal to like grow up and like know that this is a huge cultural phenomenon and how like brilliant of a movie it is, and then years later be a part of the same storyline, you know. That's kind of wild, honestly.
Your preference between the two? I always thought 2 was actually insanely underrated, and that's one of the better sequels out there. I probably saw 2 more than 1 when I was a kid straight.
Yeah, I don't know. Honestly, I probably like 1 more. I mean, yeah, it's just because that's like the first one I saw, and it was like the first karate movie I ever saw. You know what I mean? Like, it was before I saw any Bruce Lee movies, like any of that Jet Li stuff, like Jackie Chan stuff. So
Interesting. I guess me too when I was a kid.
yeah, like that was the first like. So when I thought of like fighting movies, that was the first thing I thought of. You know? Yeah. So I feel like 1, it just holds like more of a special place in my heart, just because it was like the first thing was like, whoa, that's so cool. And especially in that like for me, like there was no like All Valley tournament, you know. There wasn't somewhere I could go like watch kids beat each other up that went to the same high school, you know what I mean? Like that didn't happen. So for like in this movie world, for that to happen, it was like, damn, that's sick. Like I would love to beat up Eric, you know, like, God, me and him were just on that platform for 30 seconds, you know. But yeah, that's sort of like just cool stuff.
Going back to the original movies, the villain and the hero aspect.
Yeah.
Johnny or Danny, who, I mean,
I love.
like you for both. I'm a villain guy. I always
Yeah.
love but
I mean,
for Simon,
you know, I think the movie is very skewed towards like Daniel's the hero. I mean, obviously, right?
yeah.
But you know, there's that How I Met Your Mother episode where he's like, no, Johnny's the hero, you know, Daniel's the jerk, you know, which is kind of cool, you know. And I think that, not that Cobra Kai plays into that, but I think it just shows like, hey, there's 2 sides of every coin, you know. And I think it's cool, and they even do that with, you know, the students of Miyagi-Do that you'll come to see, and the students of Cobra Kai. And I think that's a very cool thing that they show. Obviously, I'm more on a villain mindset, just because I sort of embody that, you know, darkness a little bit. Yeah, I mean, Marty plays Sensei Kreese. He always likes to say, my shadow students, you know. He's great. He's like half in character all the time, you know. He's the funniest guy. Yeah.
Well, thank you so much.
Yeah, you guys rock. This is awesome. Thanks so much for coming.
Season 2, huge fans, and continue to kick some ass.
Yeah, I can't wait for you guys to see it. This will be dope. See you later, guys.
Okay. How do you feel to be back into the world of the Karate Kid and the Cobra Kai?
Well, when I met the writers and they promised certain things, I wasn't interested in playing him as a tough guy the whole time. I've done that for so long. And, you know, they promised to be very interesting, you know, in season. They said, you're setting up season 2 by dropping in episode 10. I said, well, it's great. Why can't I drop in episode 6? You know? And they said, no, you're going to set up season 2.
Yeah.
So in that conversation, we talked a great deal about their plans for the character in season 2, and they knew everything about every evolutionary process that my character has gone through in Vietnam, why he is the way he is, why no mercy is for the weak, why he was never allowed to win in Vietnam, and he swore when he came back he would never have he or his students lose anything. And they knew all this. They had it all already. And I just personally enjoyed the fact that they were going to evolve this character in season 2, which they've done. But he's certainly not a pansy at all. But it's fun for an actor to play all this evolutionary emotion that goes on, even in the bad guys.
Yeah.
Well, that's the most effective thing about this show, actually, and I was so blown away by, is that all the characters actually evolve and they learn what they seemed in the original.
Yeah.
Which is what I was wondering would happen with you that way. Interesting to hear that.
Well, they just did their homework. I mean, they just did their homework. God knows, It's when even you're on the red carpet and someone does their homework and interviews you on the red carpet, when they ask intelligent questions in the 5 minutes they get with you, it's always a pleasure.
Yeah.
Get someone on the red carpet and says, "Excuse me, what's your name?"
Oh no.
Yeah, that's happened, believe me. And you just drop down and you say, "What are you doing here?" But the bottom line is, you never have to say that with these writers because they have outthought you. Because that's just their homework. And they're so smart. And they're 40 years old, these guys. They're like 3 guys with endless amount of energy.
Yeah.
And, Billy and I are 10, 15 years older than they are. And they are so astute. So I was never afraid that they were going to make him like... When I read the script, and just my scene alone, when I walk in, and I was a little nervous, but everybody on the set was like, couldn't believe that John Kreese, the real guy, because this movie meant so much to so many people over the years that this figure was coming back in. It's like if John Wayne dropped in my house, or Steve McQueen popped in my backyard and we had a cigar. It would be unbelievable. Well, that's what it was to these people when I showed up. And I did the scene, the real story's only just begun. From my first rehearsal, first time I hit my line, take the cigar, all the way from the other end of the dojo I hear, oh. It was the first time they had heard the real guy saying their dialogue. That it meant so much to them. To me, I just wanted to know that I do it well. My good moment by moment. And so it was always a pleasure they do what they say they're going to do. They evolve the character, and you bought it back at that lunch that day, that dinner, and everything that they perceived has come true with this show because they're smart.
Can you talk a little bit about the differences of playing this character in sort of a cinematic arena and then going to
Love cameras, and it was a very expansive experience doing the movies. Lots of cameras and all, but you don't. Jerry Weintraub, the producer, was very much in favor of that. But on a TV show, I think that these writers, because they were producing, executive producers, and wrote, and edited, and directed, they broke all the rules for television. They overwrote. We would find ourselves in episode 8 and be doing pickups in episode 4 and episode 2. We had 3 crews going at the same time because they did not want to sacrifice quality. They wanted to make their own little movie. They wanted to make their own Star Wars. And so we were ruthlessly working, and we couldn't complain because these cats were working more than we were. They were up in the morning shooting, they were directing, they were editing, they were rewriting at night, and they were producing the show and arguing for an extra day. So there really wasn't a lot of difference, It was a little faster, and but they were. If you didn't get your cue, if you didn't get the take proper, they would keep going over and over and over again. Like Scorsese would do 20 takes with De Niro. I could do 15 takes with these guys, and they're ruthless. They don't care. And you say to yourself, how many more takes am I going to do here? The kind of thing an actor would never complain about. But they're perfectionists, so.
That's why I like this series. Like, there's one story you think you believe or you understand this world, and then like your character and then Johnny and all those characters come back into the world, and it's just flips the script of like the movies. Because now when you see the movies, you're like, there's so much depth and like
There's so much layer to
layers,
all
and that's
the
why I like this series because you're the power of your character. When he just by showing himself, it's like this power. How do you feel now when people see you and they see Cobra Kai? They see that like. There's more story behind that being seen in a different way than just a villain.
Well, his character in season 2, have you seen him season 2 at all?
No. I seen it.
Well, I mean, I can tell you this: it's mixed. It's never Dick Van Dyke.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. But it's evolved.
Yeah.
And then he goes back, and then he's evolved, and then he goes back, and so that initial John Kreese we knew. Of give you 60 push-ups on your knuckles, and you know, the scene that he has with Miyagi, where he really, I like that. That maniacal character of finish him and sweep the leg is still there. Will never leave.
Yeah.
Because they write for that. They love that character, and I'm the one who pushes to be a little more vulnerable, because I really enjoy playing something softer. I cried supermarket openings, I fucking love it, So that's what I strive for, is to go in that direction, and they write for it. But they'll never lose the essence of John Kreese. First of all, too many people love to hate him or hate to love him. It's just one of those things. And I've never yet figured that out either myself. Like, I could go with Stallone and we do Rambo and all that, and people would, start screaming at him and say, "Hey, Rocky," and challenge him. and sometimes there'd be a fight in a club or something, and they would, and he didn't start any problems, but they would never do that to me. There would never be sort of animosity or a challenge. There was something about John Kreese that they respected more, or loved to hate, or hated to love the guy, and they were embarrassed that they loved such a beast. You don't know. But it's quite a phenomenon.
Did you get to throw down in season 2 any action scenes?
I can't say anything, but I cannot. I gotta go. Take it easy. Thank you.
Nice meeting you.
All right. So, what's your favorite thing about season 2?
Wow. Good question. Big question. Season 1 was really coming in through Johnny Lawrence's eyes and seeing his point of view, and kind of coming in at this kind of tunnel vision micro. And what I love about season 2 is that now that we're in that world and after the tournament, it's almost like the camera's zooming back and we're seeing more of a world view of all the valley, and we're seeing Miyagi-Do growing, Cobra Kai growing, and getting more complicated with Kreese in there, and also the relationships of all the new characters and the young characters. So, the first season was a little bit more micro, and this is a little more macro, and it's bigger sets, lots more fights, a lot of levels, but it keeps the same tone and spirit of the movie, the show. The music's awesome, the fights are awesome, and it's going to take you on a ride, and you end up somewhere you had no idea you even got there. It's great. The writers did a great job.
So you up the ante on the action then?
Yeah. Man, I don't know how they're gonna top it, man. I mean, they're already beating us up hard, man. Like, our fight scenes are long and brutal, and lots of them. Yeah.
I always thought the original films were mostly about friendships and fathers and sons.
Yeah, sure.
Miyagi and Daniel, and now obviously Johnny and Miguel. When it comes to season 2, you and Kreese, is that something that's discussed often, not just on the page, but is that the theme that they want to go for, especially with Kreese now that you've done it with Miguel, that father-son relationship, absent father?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I mean, at the end of it all, the karate is just the canvas. It's like the back. It's like, the real stories are the relationships in this show. And I think that's what people mostly connect with, and then the martial arts is great to watch and fun. But for sure, the relationships, the father-son between Johnny and Kreese is a very dysfunctional relationship with a lot of pain and a lot of love and a lot of history. Johnny kind of wouldn't mind him having changed and become a better man and let him in. Did he? We'll find out. And Kreese has a new respect for Johnny because he's not a 17, 18-year-old boy under his thumb. He's a sensei. He's a man now, and so Kreese gives him his space. So there's a little bit of these two kind of alpha dogs kind of sniffing each other out and giving each other space, but they both have different ideas, different opinions, and different experiences. Kreese came from, a hard background, and what he experienced in life with Vietnam and all of his backstory is a lot different than Johnny growing up in the valley on a motorcycle. So at the beginning so there's a lot to sort out between the two of them. But yeah, Johnny wouldn't mind Kreese turning out to be the dad he never had. And
I was going to ask that next, because if they gave Kreese such a big background, what was Johnny's? We know what he was like in high school, but did you guys flesh that out with his kind of childhood, fatherless or not? Or whatever?
Yeah, sure. I mean, he's got his stepdad Sid that threw him some money here and there, but didn't give a crap about him. Yeah, sure. So we know that he didn't really have a father. He had a mother who married this guy that wasn't a good dad, and that's why he found Kreese. And then, it's really a lot about that, because Johnny's if you could carve it all out for Johnny, if he could just have his perfect day and that would be it would be him and Robbie on a river raft somewhere. His son. All he wants is his son. That's the heart of it. He would drop all of it. And since Robbie's so far away and unattainable, meanwhile here comes Miguel, who needs him and is responding to him in the ways that Johnny's craving sowing into his own son. But this is the boy that needs it, and Johnny needs him. So there's a real love between Johnny and Miguel. I mean, Johnny has a love for Robbie, but there's no definition to it. It's not even, there's no memories there. And he's hoping for Robbie to come over to his camp, but that's complicated by LaRusso Auto Body. The great Ad Asner. What a treat to work. It was awesome to work with him. But yeah, you're right. It's very much all about relationships, father-son and father-daughter in some cases too.
Did you have any kind of hint to the layers of this character while you were working on the original film, or was it something that you really had to reevaluate this character and look at him in a different way?
The core of him is exactly the same. I don't know, I've done a couple of these tables now, but the two parts of the script that I identified with when I read The Karate Kid that allowed Billy Zabka to play Johnny Lawrence was the first scene where he's on a motorcycle on top of the hill and he says, hey, you want a cold one? No, you're the ace degenerate. No, X degenerate, man. I got 1 year to make it work, and that's what I'm going to do, make it work, all of it. So he's got 1 year, so he's trying to make it work from the very beginning, right? And then at the end, Kreese tells him to sweep the leg. He reluctantly goes back out and almost in a hypnotic state and gets the crane kick, and at the end, hands him a trophy and says, "You're all right, LaRusso, good match." That's the heart of Johnny Lawrence. He's trying to make it work, and he's a good sport, and he's got a good heart. So those two pieces you can plug in anywhere, and you can write anything about him, and he's that same guy. So it's the same Johnny Lawrence, but he's just got 30-some years of life in between it, which was thrilling to play. So I mean, I have the pulse of the heart of this guy, and then they're writing around him, and then I go and personify that, and so it's pretty cool. It's pretty a lot of fun.
I was an 80s kid, so I grew up, that was in my wheelhouse, the movie.
Yeah.
So your character for me growing up too was always that kid that got kicked, the villain, this and that.
Yeah.
How does it feel like knowing you were the real Karate Kid, and people were always telling the story, and they're like, yeah, right, we saw the movie, but now people are like, he was right the whole time. How do you feel now people seeing you like in a different light after playing this character in the series?
Well, I mean, it's on one hand it's sort of flattering, on the other hand it's like, well, don't miss the point of the Karate Kid, because that story is timeless, and that's the story of a boy that finds his dad figure and, through a little magic and a clap of a hand goes out and overcomes his obstacles, and that's something that kids and people have related to and fed on for years and years and years. So, and I know my piece in that. I think there's something, but in hindsight now you can watch it so many times and you can go, well, everybody had a point of view here, and somehow it's now the bowl's been flipped a little bit so you can feel a little bit more of where Johnny Lawrence's world is. And that's what the guys wanted to do, is like, we know Daniel LaRusso. We want to find out who Johnny Lawrence was. And in that way show who, between, but what is this saying? Like, underneath every bully is a victim, and it's good to go deep. It doesn't let them off the hook for their behavior, but to get to understand why somebody's the way they are is great. And to be able to do it in a long form, like a show like this, where it's 10 episodes and hopefully going on and on for seasons, it goes deep in why. But to answer your question, it's both flattering and but it's not, really. It's It gives it life, though. It's nice that people are debating it and talking about it and feel that way about it. And the Johnny and me would completely agree. You know what I mean? The Billy is a little more or less, a little more like, I'll stay neutral on that.
We would joke around and we're like, I wonder if Johnny's ever gonna do like motivational speaking. I feel like
he's doing it right now. What are you talking about?
That's what I'm saying. Like actually, because this character is such like you said, a needed person in this place.
Yeah, and asthma does not exist in this dojo. Isn't that count as a
spectrum off the counter?
Yeah, right.
Is there anything that you did not get to do in season 1 or season 2 that you'd really like to see explored with the character in the future?
Oh yeah, he's got a long way to go. I mean, he's you haven't seen the second season, right?
No. Yeah.
So there's a lot of season 3 and on. There's a lot of room.
Okay.
There's a big field.
Johnny's story of redemption.
Yeah, in ways you wouldn't even think about. So it's cool.
Yeah. I'll never look at a cement truck the same way again.
What's that? Never look at a cement truck? Yeah, wait till you see the whole episode. It's pretty funny.
Well, you've been doing a great job.
Yeah.
The writers are doing an excellent job with the way you're conveying this character.
Thank you.
He has heart, man.
Yeah. Thank you. That's the great thing about it. It's like I get to bring in. That's the part of me I get to bring to the character. I always say when I call home to my wife, like, she's like, how you doing? I'm like, I don't know, like 2% of me exists right now. Because you have to shave out 98% of my real self to play this character who's a little bit stuck in the past, who has a real tainted worldview and all that. But the one thing that's in that 2% is my heart, and it's great to get to do that. So I'm glad it's working and you guys are responding to it. It's fun.
My favorite thing.
Awesome, guys. Awesome. I appreciate it. Well, season 2 on its way.
Sorry, I'm stealing him.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Have a good day, everybody. Yeah, you guys too.
Thank you so much.
All right.
Really good luck.
You guys rock. I'm glad we got to do this twice. All right. Thanks, man.
So, have you guys seen it? Let's ask you guys. So, let's turn the tables.
I can't wait.
It'll help.
Awesome.
When did this all start? How long have you guys been trying to get this made? And what was the process like? And what motivated you guys to do it?
I mean, it was like 16 years ago we talked about doing this as a movie, and it just, we were all from the feature world, and it just seemed very impractical, so we never pursued it in a real way. But about 3 years ago, we started to see the way things, long-form narratives on television, these streaming shows and premium, long-form storytelling. Felt like a really good match to continue the story of the Karate Kid. We were huge fans, obviously, of the movies forever, and we were huge fans of the Cobra Kai characters forever, and always loved the idea of just sort of going in through the Cobra Kai angle, exploring what happened to that bully in high school. But being able to do it as a series, we knew that we could not only explore Johnny Lawrence, but we could explore Daniel LaRusso and sort of reverse the roles, but also create a whole new generation of Karate Kids, each with their own story for today's generation to fall in love with.
How does YouTube specifically as a platform make this either easier or beneficial for you guys?
I mean, the interesting thing about YouTube is that when we designed this show, we never said, where it belongs is YouTube. But YouTube itself, when we pitched the show, became very passionate about this show and wanted this to fit into their platform, which is this global platform that is immediately day and date available in so many places around the world that if we took it to a cable network, it might not be the same thing. Depending on what other streamer you're at, it's a different situation. What we like about it was that the access point for this show is Johnny and Daniel, these guys that our generation, 3 guys who are not 18 years old, grew up with. But the meat of our show is this kind of young storyline that's taking place in today's high school with a lot of teenage cast. There's kind of a Riverdale hiding in plain sight on our show, and there's an opportunity for that existing audience at YouTube to get sucked into this show through our teenage characters. And it's just a very accessible platform. Everyone has it on their computers and their phone. They use it every day. There's something nice about going to YouTube and being asked to go watch, an episode or 2 of Cobra Kai for free and getting hooked in and then saying, all right, how much is this thing again? So we really enjoyed the opportunity of being the first kind of bigger show on their network to lend validity that you can do a big show anywhere. Content is always possible of being king as long as you give it the runway to work.
what was the most difficult thing about writing the show or getting it to script? Like, did you guys find any part of the process for you guys that was the most difficult?
No, it's easy. We've been in this business a while. This happened amazingly fast. I would say, it was just a little over, maybe like 2 years ago
Exactly
today.
2 years ago.
2 years ago today, we were like talking about pitching the show, and 2 years later, we're thinking about a season 3 of the show in our heads. So we're like, okay, like that's just goes to show you how fast television works. It's almost like, I would say the biggest challenge is coming from the movie world. You have a lot more time to, you write your script and then you shoot it and then you edit it. And with TV, it's all happening at the same time and there's a lot of pressure. This is like a 5-hour movie essentially that we have to shoot with about the same amount of time as like one movie. And a truncated editing, cycle, and a legion of fans that will be upset if we destroy their hopes and dreams. But we don't have time to worry about that because we're the fans, and we want to make sure that it's good, and we know on set if it sucks. So we just, the toughest part is just being on the set there and having to deal with the stress of like 3 movies, trying to fit it into one, knowing that it has to be good, but you just rely on your fandom. You rely on, believing whether this is something you would want to see, and I think that as long as that's our philosophy, we're never going to make something that fans want.
Yeah, I mean, at some point the starter pistol goes off and you're in production, and our job is to make sure that the moment we enter production, we have the right amount of scripts written already that make sense, where we can be rewriting, looking at everything else as we get going, because now we're directing, now we're show running a production, now we're editing as we go, because the pace that it goes is just everything starts getting layered on top of each other, and we can't afford to drop anything in a way that feels like, all right, well, that episode can be kind of the bottle one that kind of sucks because the next one's going to be great, but because this is really a very long movie that we're telling.
You guys have a killer cast and they're all bringing their games. Like, we appreciate it. You guys are giving these characters a lot of art, though, and a lot of layers. Which is the toughest character for you guys to write? Or which one do you have the most fun?
I mean, they're all fun. They're all fun to write. I mean, it's weird. Dimitri's really fun to write in a weird way, just because he's like the most. I don't know, probably has a similar approach to karate that we would have in terms of like he's he's not exactly an athlete, and he's always a pessimist about stuff, and so there's just a comedic element that we enjoy with writing that character. But
go ahead.
Yeah, you got it.
I like writing for Hawk because he was Eli for such a short period of time, and he was obviously Hawk for 3.5 episodes, 3 episodes and change last year, but we've now been living with Hawk for a much longer period of time that Eli just starts being a little bit more in your rearview mirror, and there's moments where you're writing dialogue for this kid and you're realizing where it began, that it's just such a stark contrast that it's fun to remember that there's also this kind of like this sad, quiet kid underneath all that, all those tattoos and mohawks.
But Johnny and Kreese.
Yeah, I was gonna say, for me, it's Johnny because he gets to vent about millennials, and you end up, we live in a society where things change so quickly, and yet Johnny is this guy who's still in like 1984, and so he becomes a kind of Archie Bunkerish guy that's just like totally inappropriate in front of, he's the last person who should be mentoring children. And so that's what's kind of fun about that. Also, this season it's been great writing for Kreese. It's kind of like the ability to write a Star Wars movie and have like the Emperor Palpatine, like this guy who's just, been this historically evil character, and then get at the humanity, underneath that has been a lot of fun.
I would say that that's what I think we enjoy the most. It's funny because we all come from the world of comedy, but even in the ridiculous movies that we made, we always cared about the story and we cared about the characters and that the audience was behind them and connecting with those characters. And it's fun to take characters that everyone's seen in a very particular way and get to think, well, what happened before then? What happened after then? What shaped them and what continues to shape them now. And so that heart and that sort of digging deeper underneath the surface of iconic characters like Johnny and Daniel and Kreese, it's a blast.
So amongst the three of you guys, what's the process you guys have as far as writing these scripts? Like, brainstorm and then you guys all pull your ideas, or you each write?
Yeah, we brainstorm year round at this point. We eat all our meals together. We live together when we're in production. We drive to work together. There's not a time of day that we're not thinking about Cobra Kai or talking about it. And when we're actually approaching the writer's room, we are having the cabal in terms of let's all put everything out there. Nothing is unsacred or sacred, and don't care about saying anything stupid. And we figure out kind of the bare bones, as specific as we can for the entire season. We enter a writer's room and we start bouncing it around with about 8 more people and kind of hear what they have to say in response to what we're saying, and also free to pitch new things. Nothing's out of bounds. And then we dig in and we write a lot of the scripts from scratch. We rewrite a lot of the other scripts, some considerably, some not, but it ultimately has to feel like one cohesive story that we're telling, that when the season is done it feels like one voice told this story, and that's just because we never stop that conversation.
I know a lot of people keep trying to pull out, Elizabeth
because I was going to give you the answer, but all right. This was the time. I promised myself at this table.
No heartbreakers. Bring back my childhood crush. But other than that, are there any other characters that people don't talk about? Chosen, Yukie, Miko, I think her name was. The other ones that don't talk about as much, though it should be. That you've kind of discussed, or in your heart of hearts would be excited to bring back. Without spoiling anything, just
I mean,
I was just gonna say, in the writers' room, and when we're in the car rides, and when we're having our meals together, we talk about all the characters. Literally every single character that exists in that universe, we've discussed in one way or another.
There was Mike Barnes, there was Snake, there was Dennis.
Yes,
there was, Terry
for
Silver's
the fans
Butler.
out there that want to, Terry Silver, Mike Barnes, these names come up in the writers' room. We know these, for the actors who are still alive who played those characters, and we understand that there's a lot of fun in bringing back those characters. It's like we did with Marty Kove at the end of season 1. It's got to make sense. It's got to have an impact. And who knows? Maybe in the season 2, if you watch it, you'll get to see some of these characters from the original movies.
But we talk about the Miyagi-verse, those first 4 movies, as being a legitimate. That's the story. We own the history. Whatever happened in Karate Kid 3, that happened to Daniel LaRusso. Whatever happened in Karate Kid 4, that influenced Miyagi's journey. But the monks could return. So
who says we haven't brought the monks back already?
For all you know, there's 4 episodes with the monks. But yeah, it's all. I mean, we like to when and if those characters weave into our story or enter the story for a considerable amount of time, it has to be like when Marty Kove came back, in terms of this has to feel like an inflection point for the show. It has to feel big. There has to be a reaction to it that the show is different as a result of this character.
It has to work for an audience that doesn't give a shit about any of these characters. We write thinking about okay, if you don't know who, if you didn't see the originals, why are you watching this? Why are you watching it? You're watching it because it's a story that still resonates today. Kids get bullied and they need a mentor, and this guy's got these tricks that he can teach the kid. That's your entry point in, and so if Terry Silver or Mike Barnes are coming back, it's got to work in a way where they understand, they get it, and it's like you don't need to know the movies. Like you know who that is because of the relationship to this character that I care about.
The fun is going to be, the access point to Miguel and Sam and Robbie was through Johnny and Daniel. The access point to those characters might be through Miguel and Sam and Robbie. Like you might start finding yourself you care more and more about who's in front of you and what the present day of the story is. The reason we cared about Terry Silver back in the day was because we really cared about Daniel LaRusso, and we need to find that way back to those characters.
We haven't seen all the characters' parents yet, so I'm just saying. Anybody? Yes. Certain characters could be adopted.
They could be lying about their last name.
We'll spoil it here. Terry Silver is actually the father of all of the children on our show. Yes.
One sperm donor.
Yes, exactly.
Well, once again, you guys are doing a great job on the writing, so keep up the good work.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Really appreciate it.
It's not a great Karate Kid show. It's a great show that happens to be about Karate Kid.
I appreciate it.
We appreciate that. That was the goal from the beginning. It was always just make something that people who've never heard of the Karate Kid can love the way we didn't know what the Karate Kid was before we saw the Karate Kid.
All you need to know is these guys don't like each other, and bad blood.
Before we cut off, when did you guys know? Like, I think we did it, guys. I think the fans are like.
Well, the moment that they gave that we were meeting with Ralph Macchio and he said yes, and we're like, okay, well we got Ralph Macchio, and then we're doing
nothing else matters.
I think we felt confident from the beginning that the story we were going to tell was a story that people were going to connect with. We felt like we had the ability to execute it, but I think specifically once you've edited it all together, and you're there and there's music and there's all that, and you get to the late portion of post-production where you're with the sound mixers, and these are like a group of people who watch every kind of television show or movie come through their doors, and they're taking you aside and they're just like, this is really good. Like, this is a really good show, and they're not exactly who you're expecting is going to be the biggest fans of the show. And when they're saying it, and when other people who are working in post are responding to it the way that we intended, they're the first audience.
And it goes back to your question about YouTube. That was the day one when this show came out. Not only was there a video with the show on it, there was a list of 10,000 comments below it. The fan interaction on this show. You don't have to go to YouTube to talk about a Netflix show. You can literally put right beneath the show. I thought this sucked, or I thought this. And we were in a car. But we were in a car. Coming. We were doing a couple of interviews in New York, and I remember as the show was launched, you see the number of the views going up, and you're like, I guess people are watching it. But you also see the thumbs up, and there's something about watching that happen in real time. You're like, I think we're connecting with other fans like us.
I just remember the first episode last year when we shot Johnny Lawrence watching Iron Eagle and getting emotional.
That was
he gets very emotional, listening to Chappie's speech. I just remember thinking, I love this show. I don't care how it turns out. It's gonna be a show.
We at least have this.
So
pawn shop
Awesome. It's one of the things that we really enjoy is seeing characters interact with each other. That Johnny has these gut-wrenching, heartfelt scenes, and then he has interactions with Armand Sarkarian where they're screaming at each other.
But the people not connected to karate, like Voss Sanchez, who plays Nestor, who runs the convenience store. He doesn't give a shit about the rivalry or anything, but he's just in the middle of this guy's life, and we love those characters who are just kind of they're drive-by characters in this universe, but they're now in this universe.
I love it as well. Was it a Coors Banquet, Johnny? No matter out of the way. Is there a reason why?
You would think that we would be getting paid for Coors Banquet. It's we did Harlan Kumar go to White Castle. We got no money for White Castle. For whatever reason, we like certain brands and our characters liking certain things, and for whatever reason, Coors regular Coors. It seemed like
he's tossing away all the good beer.
It summed up who he is, where he is in his life, and for us it was he's not getting a craft beer, he's getting an American beer.
I remember we wrote it on the page, and we would write a beer and be like, that's not right, and then this and that, and then the moment we wrote Coors Banquet, those words together, it was just that kind of just made sense.
The crazy thing about Coors Banquet is that you know, we barely ever saw Coors Banquet in the wild before the show. And now there's billboards for Coors Banquet everywhere.
Coors Light had a much bigger advertising.
Everyone knows Coors Light.
And so it's
and now there's billboards. It's on like hipster bar menus
and all that. You never saw just regular Coors commercials. So there was something about like
we're bringing it back.
He won't drink like light beer.
Right.
He won't drink this. He won't drink that. It was a process of elimination, and it just feels like the right kind of beer for a guy who's depressed but not suicidal.
That should be their tagline.
We use the bottles a lot, which seems
we like
Stubbies.
which is old-fashioned and just a throwback like.
Well, they got the stubbies. Like, it's a very particular kind of bottle they have also, which is great. And like, but the can, like, we actually have discussions on set with our props department. Like, is this a bottle scene or is this a can scene? Well, you know,
it's funny because sometimes Billy will come to us and be like, you know, we don't have any of the bottles right. I feel like he'd be drinking the bottle right now. And we're just like, it's the best. That's the best problem.
It's cheap enough.
Yeah, it's right in the pocket. It makes
exactly.
One little thing in there.
I was gonna say, I'm sorry to say on that note.
We gotta go.
Everyone,
Thanks, guys. Appreciate it, guys. Thank you so much.